Welcome to another episode of Intuition First podcast with your hosts, Heather McKay and Christine Youre. We're here to connect you to your intuition and the gifts of the universe to get more out of your life and your business.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Intuition First. I am Heather McKay.
And I'm Christine Youre.
Welcome. Today we are going to be talking about how we are made perfectly imperfect and all about what that means. So, Christine, you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, what's perfectly imperfect? Perfectly means that you were designed in the image of God, Goddess, Source, right? That you were given all the tools and all the things that you need in life to move forward, to become an expanded soul or a contracted soul, whatever it is, path you've chosen in this lifetime. Right. That you don't have to gain or acquire anything to be in the image of God, Goddess, Source. You're just given everything you need from the moment of birth. Imperfect is the conversation that you have things to learn. There are things to learn in this lifetime for you to have a greater awareness and a deepening so that you can have wisdom and insight to grow your spiritual body and provide a contribution to the collective consciousness. So being perfectly imperfect is knowing that you are lacking nothing and that you are a student of human life and spiritual well-being so that you can evolve, you can expand so that when you take your last breath, your contribution has been through the human experience of understanding the peaks and valleys of what that means in your lifetime.
Right. So do you think that it takes some time sometimes to realize this, to if you haven't been told that from the time you were small, if you haven't been reassured that that's how you were made and all those things, it takes some self-awareness and some study to get that.
I think the one thing that we don't give our kids, at least in our generation, maybe we have given that to our children, but our parents giving it to us. And I know that this is not true for everybody, but, there is that thing called forgiveness, right? Growing and learning. And I can remember when I was young where my mom would say, you knew better. You knew you shouldn't have done that. That wasn't the right thing. And I can remember going, did I know better? Maybe I did, especially when it's your first time and you're having an experience to get your reference system, right? She used to say the other thing too is, well, if your friends went to go jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, would you jump off after them? And I used to think, what does that have to do with anything? But the point of it is that there's this admonishment for the thing called learning your life lessons and learning inside of your living. And I think me as a parent, I feel like I was definitely more forgiving. And I asked more questions instead of going to that place of punishment.
Right.
So, sorry, ask me again your question. I think I missed it.
Well, no, I think you were covering. I was just thinking that it seems like sometimes, just like you said, your mom saying, if all your friends, you knew better than that. If all your friends went and jumped off the bridge, would you do it too? It seems like sometimes as an older person, you or the older person can use their frame of reference in a way that you don't have yet as a child, because they do know better. They have lived longer than you and they have experienced more than you. So they do know better, but you haven't had all their experiences. So maybe you don't really know better.
Right.
They just think you should because that's their frame of reference. And that's the framework that they're viewing whatever the action is or whatever the wrong thing is or whatever. They're looking at it through their lens instead of through your lens.
Well, and the other thing too is that we're just human. right? So
Right.
we're supposed to come into this lifetime and make mistakes, because
Right.
when we make mistakes, we have lessons and we get to learn. I call that being in contraction. When you've made a mistake, your body feels terrible. You start doubting yourself. You start asking all these questions. You start wondering, why didn't I know better? Why didn't I see it differently? I could have done that differently. And that's all good, because that's an introspective view. It's when we keep having that chatter for months or years, that's when it becomes detrimental. Like, it's always
Right.
great to make the inquiry and have compassion and forgiveness for yourself. Like, oh yeah, I didn't have that awareness, right? Or somebody didn't
Right.
share their experience with me, so I could have that in my library of reference.
Right.
Okay, I got it now, and you move on. It's when we dwell in the mistake and we constantly punish ourselves over and over, and so we just can't get up anymore.
Right.
You know,
And some of that can come from that outside, if we are getting that outside um admonishment or punishment or whatever from somebody that we respect or care for or whatever, it hurts that much more. And then it's harder to let it go. It's harder to let go of any shame that we feel or self-doubt or whatever. We hang on to it longer, I think, depending on where it comes from in the first place.
right. And here's the thing, like, we're born into a family, and our family raises us and socializes us and conditions us. And then we break away from the family, we become independent. We may or may not find someone else to live our lives with, whatever that's looking like. Our parents are our biggest influences, because they gave us life. And then of course your siblings have influence on you, right? So it's also important that you know,
Right. Mhm.
that you make the distinction, because sometimes the feedback you get from your family or your friends isn't the best thing to support you. And that in itself is a lesson too, for you to be able to distinguish that. And I just say that because so many times a parent will harp on you like you're a child and just keep going on and on and on. And
Right.
you don't know how to break away. You break away in making a choice. Like, okay, thanks for the feedback. Now I got enough. I'm out. And go off and figure the rest of it out for yourself. Now, if you make the same mistake again, that's because you didn't get the lesson the first time. And if you make the
Right.
mistake again and again, then you really just need to step back and go, whoa, why does that keep coming up? Because that's the same thing over and
Right.
over and over. That's a deeper and different conversation.
And we covered that on another episode too.
We
Recurring
did.
themes.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
we did.
But yeah, and I think too, as you grow into an adult, if the parent still talks to you like that, still and goes on and on, but you're not a child and you are an adult, it's just it's the worst. Um, because you feel like you do have a frame of reference then. So
And when
as
a
long as we know.
parent keeps acting that way, you have to remember they can't help it. Like, they act that way because
Right.
they've always been your parent and they see you in a certain way. And it's your job,
Yeah.
the child, it's your job not to get angry and blow up, but just to clearly define, like, I'm an adult now. I appreciate your feedback, but thank you very much. Stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I once heard, and I didn't think of it in this way, but I have a daughter, of course. So now that I've heard this, it makes me think of it, that the parent always sees their child as they are a spectrum of ages. They always see them as a baby and as a toddler and as a young child and a teenager and a young adult. They see all of it at once, all the time. And sometimes it's hard to let the child grow into the next phase, and they're making decisions and all those kinds of things. But I never really thought of that way. But now when I look at my daughter, I think I do see her in all the different facets of the life that she's lived so far. And
Well,
I have to make a conscious effort to make sure that I'm acknowledging the present version of her, and not the young version of her. You know what I mean? She's a
so,
teenager. So
so here's the thing. If you're parenting well, you are raising your child to be independent of you because you want them to function on
Exactly.
their own, right?
Exactly.
So my kids are 24 and 22, and my husband died when they were 10 and 8. And from that moment that he died, my job on this planet was to make sure my kids could function if something happened to me, if I should die in a car accident or airplane or whatever. So I raised them super independent, and yeah, they don't need me. And sometimes that makes me feel a little sad because I love to spend more time with them. But they're highly capable young men in the world functioning as young adults. And they are emotionally intelligent, and they're smart, and they're compassionate men. And so I did my job.
You did good. You did good, Mama.
Yeah. And, it'll be
the best we can hope for.
It'll be interesting for me as they grow to see how they see themselves in the world.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and if they share some of your the way that you brought them up, if they share the same thing with their families.
Yeah, well, according to somebody that I work with, I broke the ancestral legacy pass-ons of all our karma. So like I broke them free.
Well, that should be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'll be a present to them, their kids, and my grandkids or my great grandkids.
Right.
So, yeah. Woohoo! So just know you were born perfectly imperfect as a vessel for lessons, learning, and wisdom. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're whole and you're unique and divine.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great spot for us to wrap up.
Okay.
Remember that as you go about your day, perfectly imperfect. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe. We're coming out with new episodes all the time, and we're happy that you've decided to share your time with us.
And we'd love your feedback. So,
oh yes,
leave comments. You're welcome to email us if you have something that you want to listen to, or there's a topic of conversation you want to have. Please leave that for us in the comments. So thank you for spending your time.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Intuition First. We're so glad that you chose to spend your time with us today. If you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please share it with them and tag us on Instagram at Intuition First. We'd love to hear what you enjoyed and what you'd like to hear more of. And until the next time, keep listening to your intuition. It really knows what it's talking about.